Steve Harvey really a fraud? There is some crazy drama in the Harvey household because Steve's ex-wife, Mary, just exposed him for lying to our faces for years. And she's claiming that Steve is not the great guy that we think he is. Y'all aren't going to believe the tea she's spilling on Steve and his wife Marjorie, so you better hold on to your edges because this is about to be one wild ride. Now, not many people know this, but Marjorie is actually Steve's third wife because he was married to another woman before Mary, and that's the mother of his twin daughters, Brandy and Carly. He met Mary in 1996 and he actively started pursuing her, even though he was still legally married to his first wife, Marcia. At the time, Mary was working at the counter of a cosmetics store, and that's how she and Steve met. He came into the store when she was working and they exchanged numbers. At the time, Mary didn't exactly have a romantic interest and she just gave him her number just to be polite. But Steve pursued her heavily and she slowly started to fall for his charms, especially after he showed up to her work with a box of 100 Hershey's Kisses and a note saying, "I'd walk 1,000 miles for your kisses." Mary soon started a romantic relationship with Steve, and for a while, things were going great between them. Now, before y'all start making comments about how she probably was after Steve's money, how she was a gold digger, let me remind y'all that Steve wasn't popular back then. In fact, she had to hold him down a couple of times because he was broke and was a struggling comedian who was trying to get his big break. He was hopping from club to club and arena to arena to perform in front of patrons at the club. So he ain't have any gold to be dug. But like I said, Mary held him down through the hard times, and she even gave him the spare key to her apartment in case he needed a place to crash. His career slowly began to take off, and more people were queuing to watch him perform because he was in high demand. Y'all know how they say behind every successful man is a woman. Well, Mary was that woman for Steve, and when he started to get a crazy level of popularity, she brought up the idea for him to start up his own club instead of performing at other clubs for just a cut of the fee. Now, Steve was already popular, but we all know that fame don't always equal rich because a lot of these celebs just be living fake lives for the gram. Anywho, he didn't even have enough money to start his club because projects like that be costing a whole lot of money. But Mary, being the lover girl that she was, decided to invest in his club, and she pulled her life savings of $250,000 into Steve's club because she had so much faith in him. She even helped out with the design, interiors, and other stuff for the club. So not only did she put her money into it, but she also put her sweat into it as well. Talk about the ultimate lover girl. It was after this that Mary discovered that Steve was married with 3 whole kids. Imagine supporting your man for years and investing $250,000 into his business. Then you find out that he had an entire family that he kept hidden from you? Child, it would be my 13th reason for real. But Steve managed to convince her that he was in the process of divorcing his first wife, Marcia, so Mary stayed. They got married in 1996 and had their son, Winton Harvey, in 1997. But y'all know what they say. Once a cheat is always a cheat. And this was true in the case of Steve and Mary because Steve continued cheating on her for a large part of their marriage. By this time, Steve was getting even more popular and was starting to make real money. So quite naturally, women started to flock around him. And he had one particular side piece that he kept for years, a woman named Terry Smith. And he seemed to be really into her. Y'all know how side pieces often have a crazy amount of audacity? Well, Terry certainly had a lot of audacity, and she even wrote a note to Mary informing her that she was having an affair with Steve. Mary still stayed with Steve, who continued his affair with Terry for 9 years. They eventually got divorced in 2005, and honestly, it's nothing short of a miracle that the marriage even lasted that long to begin with. 5 seconds after he and Mary filed for divorce, he started dating Marjorie Bridges, who later became Marjorie Harvey. Now, people have always speculated that Steve had been cheating on Mary with Marjorie before they even divorced, but the couple has always denied it. In fact, a lot of people believe that Marjorie actually trapped Steve into marriage because of how quickly they seemed to move on after his divorce. Plus, she somehow managed to convince Steve not to get a prenup before they got married, which is just wild when you think about it, because if things go south between them, she could take up to half of everything he has. Steve was already a millionaire when they got married, so it's not like she could claim that she was with him from the bottom. Plus, let's not get over the fact that she convinced Steve to adopt all 3 of her children that she had from previous relationships. He gave them his last name, provided for them, and treated them like his own. Now, sure, Steve was a decent man for doing that, but I don't think we give Marjorie enough credit for how much she was able to finesse Steve, okay? She was the OG material girl, and now she's got Steve trapped because he ain't going nowhere. Also, Marjorie herself has a very shady past. Marjorie was under investigation in the 90s while she was married to drug lord Jim L. Townsend, who was indicted for attempting to buy 40 kilos of sugar, if you know what I mean. He was also sentenced to life in prison, but only served 26 years after being granted a pardon by then President Barack Obama. At the time, the FBI also wanted Marjorie because they suspected that she played a role in the drug ring, and authorities told Jim that his wife would be arrested as they had substantial evidence of her own illegal activities. But her then husband Jim cut a deal with the authorities to leave Marjorie out of it. He took the fall because Marjorie was 8 months pregnant with their second child, Jason, and he also said he feared their 5-year-old daughter Morgan would be left without a mother if he didn't take a plea deal. And guess what? After Jim, Marjorie was also linked to another drug dealer, Donnell Woods, who is the father of Lori. And then there was also rumors that Donnell happens to be Jimmy's cousin. So for Marjorie to move from Jimmy to Donnell, that's just wild. Anywho, Mary and Steve split. He moved on with Marjorie, and well, things should have been okay, right? Wrong. Because they got into a crazy legal battle, especially over custody of their son Winton, who was a minor at the time. Mary claimed that Steve was violent toward him, and she claimed that the divorce left her ruined because she lost everything, including her business, her cars, and she even got evicted from the home that she shared with Steve in the divorce. Even more, Steve never paid her the divorce settlement money that she was ordered to by the court. She also exposed Steve for allegedly hitting their son whenever he went over to Steve and Marjorie's for visitation. She claimed that Winton told her that Steve once punched him in the chest so hard that he got the wind knocked out of him. She claimed that Winton once came back from Steve's place beaten and bloody and had bruises all over him. It was so bad that Mary claimed that Winton couldn't pee for days. She called the police, who came over and took pictures as evidence, but then they concluded that Steve wasn't a source of danger to the boy and they closed the investigation. Soon after that, Steve sued for sole custody and won, which means that Winton now lived with him permanently. And it was the end of the last times that she saw Winton because she claimed that Steve soon turned their son against her. What's more, he filed a motion to put a gag order on Mary so she couldn't talk about the case publicly, but he had no gag order, meaning that he was free to talk about it as much as he liked, which is just messed up. Someone commented, based on the timelines and all the different information I've heard about Steve and his relationship history, he clearly used Mary to come up and had no intentions of staying with her permanently. He was still married to his first wife when he first met Marjorie and told her he was going to marry her one day, and then he ended up marrying Mary first. So that just tells me he was not in a place where Marjorie was willing to accept him, or he didn't feel worthy of her at the time, so he used Mary to come up. Another person said, he did Mary so terrible. She never recovered emotionally from that trauma. And this other person tweeted, this is why I would never build a man up or invest in him. Heck to the no for me, to then turn around and give the best to another woman. No.